Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going through my guide to the best party member skills and party member setups in Persona 3 Reload. So I'll be basically going through everyone's theurgies, personalities, and how they sort of synergize with one another. I'll go through all the skills that I believe are the best skills to have on each party member, especially at max level, or max level to where you unlock all the abilities for everyone. I'll also be going through some alternatives, which are basically just skills that I probably swap out at the Blue V Club, where you can just basically relearn skills that you accidentally deleted or unlearned. And then basically just going through just setups and 4-member parties and whatnot that work well. I won't be saying anything about how to get the personality traits. Basically, you just need to hang out with the party members in the dorm. I believe each person can get up to 2 traits or upgrade, get the new trait and then upgrade their trait. So I think that's a total of 4 hangouts at the dorm per person. So I can definitely make a guide on how to get the personalities for each party member. So leave a comment down below if you want to see that one. And then yeah, so I'm assuming that you probably have the personalities. And then obviously everyone's double theurgies basically happen when they awaken their second persona, or their ultimate persona essentially, and that happens through the story, except for Koromaru unfortunately, because he doesn't get a persona upgrade. And yeah, so that's basically what the guide will entail. I'll have timestamps down below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and then leave a comment down below about your builds as well, because I would love to see them. So I've leveled them up to the point where they learn all their skills. And I'll just give you a run through basically on what skills I think are best for each party member. And then I'll run through sort of any skills that sort of synergize with their personality traits plus with their theurgies. And then I'll go through basically what party members I would recommend. But again, this is just my opinion on all these skills and party setups and all that sort of stuff. By all means, I'm sure everyone has their own preference. These are just my preferences and what I think is probably pretty strong, and I'll give you the reasonings behind that. So basically, we're going to start off with Yukari. So Yukari is pretty much your main healer for the team. That's pretty much like what she's good at. She's also good at curing ailments, especially when she finally gets Rita's shower. So Yukari is of the Lover's Arcana, so that's the Arcana that you need to rank up. She does have a social link available to her, and you can spend time with her in the dorm to unlock her personality, which is basically a healing apex, reduce SP cost of recovery skills by 25%, which is really good, which is exactly why she is the main healer of the group. And then her 2 theurgies are Cyclone, Arrow, and Tranquility. Now, Tranquility is just basically a group concentrate, so that's very helpful in situations where I believe some concentrated magic will just deal more damage than Cyclone Arrow, pretty much. So it's a very good theurgy skill. So yeah, her theurgy is basically after healing someone, her desire to prevent death strengthens. So if you do even 1 Meteorahan on the team or heal like the group, basically her theurgy gauge charges pretty much 75% every single time. So her theurgy can be up most, if not all, like every 2 turns-ish. And then you can obviously use Tranquility, and it's just so good. The synergy on this is really good. So you basically can heal everyone for free pretty much with the healing apex characteristic, and then you got your gauge condition to charge up the theurgy, and then you've got Tranquility. So all around very good. So just going through her persona stats basically. So I've got her ultimate persona unlocked, which is Isis. Obviously EO was before that. So I've got the skills of Garudine, Margarudine, Meteorahan, Amrita Shower, Samarakam, Masakunda, Windbreak, and Windamp. I do believe this is the best setup that she can possibly have. Obviously Garudine, Margarudine, pretty staple. Obviously Windamp, pretty staple. Meteorahan, Amrita Shower, Samarakam, pretty staple. So Meteorahan is basically full restore all allies. Amrita Shower is basically cure ailments on all allies, and Samarakam is revive a downed party member to full HP. So I do highly recommend Masakunda. In the late game, it's probably okay if you keep Sukunda, because obviously you'd be just dealing with like 1 or 2 enemies at a time. But Yukari doesn't have any SP issues, especially from mid to late game. So Masakunda is definitely the way to go in my opinion. You're really giving up 12 SP, and to be perfectly honest, even if you just slap on like accessory that gives her SP like 7 SP a turn, you're pretty much whittling down this to like 5 SP difference between the group enemy secunda and just a single ally secunda. Now Windbreak is the one ability that I do believe you could probably swap out for something like Palimpa. Ailments in this game is a bit weird, especially because you can't really use ailments on bosses. Most of the time they actually block it. So in the mid to late game, bosses are pretty much the big enemies that you really need to worry about. Normal type enemies, even on like hard and merciless, it's not too bad. But I've just got Windbreak here in case, there's an enemy where it's resistant to wind and there's no other opportunity or choice but to do a Windbreak and get a Margarodine in, for example. But you can switch this for Palimpa. You can also switch it for Amrita Drop, which I believe is like 10 SP. Or actually no, I think it's like 8 SP instead of Amrita Shower in case like one of your party members instead of doing a group one with Amrita Shower. But either way, it's fine. Alright, so we'll go through Junpei next. So Junpei is a physical damage dealer of the group. His persona is Trismegistus, upgraded from Hermes. And Junpei's whole thing is to rely on crits, basically. So all Junpei is supposed to be is just a crit machine and a physical damaging machine. So with Junpei, you can see that his gauge condition is after landing critical hit, he becomes motivated by his own potential. And his characteristics, critical boost increases critical rate and increases critical hit strength. So basically, you charge your crits and then you go back into, which charges your Theurgy in turn. So you just want to make sure that he has as many, or can do as many crits as possible, which means you want to put accessories that give, like Rebellion or Apt Pupil, anything to power up his crits. His two Theurgies are Hack and Blast and Blaze of Life. Now, Blaze of Life is a bit weird. It does do massive fire damage, so obviously Junpei also has Aigis and access to fire magic. So just keep in mind, Blaze of Life does massive fire damage, ignoring resistances, but it also fully restores the user's HP. And if you go through the story without spoiling anything, you'll see why. Hack and Blast is severe slash damage. So yeah, just a physical damage dealing type. Alright, so we're just going to go and look at Junpei's stats. Persona stats. So yep, Trismegistus. And basically the skills I have are Vorpal Blade, Brave Blade, Vile Assault, Gigantic Fist, Agidine, Marakukaja, High Counter, and Regenerate 3. So it's pretty self-explanatory. There's not really any other skills I would really like swap out. Maybe Regenerate 3, if you kind of reliably can heal Junpei, which if you pair Junpei with Yukari, you probably could. You could probably get away with the Regenerate 3 and maybe put on something like Shift Boost, maybe. But to be honest, I think this is pretty set in stone. There's not really any other abilities that I would put on Junpei. So Vorpal Blade deals severe damage to everything. Severe damage is Brave Blade to single, and then you've just got, you've got Slash, Pierce, and Strike attacks. Marakukaja is pretty self-explanatory. You can boost the party's defense, so it gives them a little bit of utility. And then Agidine for anyone who's weak, basically against fire. Alright, so moving on to Akihiko. So Akihiko is also sort of a hybrid between physical and magic damage. He got a pretty big nerf in Reload. I remember in FES he was definitely much better than he is in Reload. So if you look at his Theurgy skills and whatnot, his personality and gauge condition, so after strengthening himself, his fighting spirit rises. Now I'm not too sure if other people buff him, if that also fulfills his gauge conditions. I've seen online that some people say it does, some people say it doesn't. I haven't really tested this myself. I don't really use Akihiko. I don't think he really does add that much to a team, especially because his characteristic buff amp doesn't really do anything too great. Like greatly increases effects of buffs on self, which I believe only extends it for, it only extends it for another 2 turns. But again, I'm not too sure. Leave a comment down below if you know. But that's just this way. There's basically buff himself, pretty much, and then to get his Theurgy up. It doesn't really synergize well because in the mid to late game, you can't reliably buff an individual person. It's highly recommended that you have group buffing and group debuffing skills. So it just doesn't really make sense to have Akihiko in your team in that regard. It's 2 Theurgies, which don't give too much utility. Lightning Spike, Heavy Electric, and then Severe Electric. So you're pretty much just doubling up, and then when you get Electric Onslaught from Akihiko's Awakening, like you're just going to be using this all the time if you are going to be using Theurgy. So it's not like Junpei, it's not like Yukari where you've got sort of a damage dealing Theurgy as well as a utility-esque Theurgy, or at least 2 different elements or affinities. nah, Akihiko has none of that. So if we move on to Akihiko's persona stats, his is Caesar. Obviously beforehand, I believe it is Polydeuces. And then the skills that I have on him are, we got Zeodyne, we got Maziodyne, we got God's Hand. Then we have Matarunda, Elect Boost, Elect Amp, Evade Ice, and Shock Boost. He does learn some healing skills, and it could be argued that you could use them. He also has access to Masuku Kaja. In my opinion, it doesn't, like, you know, I don't have any buffing skills on him to help him with his Theurgy, but to be perfectly honest, it's not really that useful in the first place anyway. And I think if you just go all in on electric damage, I think he's better played that way. But you can definitely swap out Elect Boost for Masuku Kaja. You can also swap it out for Daiharan if you really need a support healer type thing, but it's really not sort of suited towards that role. And I do believe that this is probably the best that you can possibly get. Just go all in on electric damage, and then you have Strike if you need to. Matarunda is definitely a must, because yeah, you just have another debuffer, group debuffer basically. So I don't see you replacing that one. The only thing is, you probably, these two do stack, by the way, which is why I've got them there. So, but you could get rid of Elect Boost, which is only the 25% buff for something else. Elect Amp is the 50, so you could get rid of this one. Evade Ice is pretty necessary because yeah, he's weak to ice, obviously. So yeah, not much to say about Akihiko. This is, I believe, is probably the best setup, but you could replace Elect Boost. That's probably my recommendation. Okay, we're gonna go on to Mitsuru here. So Mitsuru's persona is Artemisia. Beforehand, before the awakening, it is Penthesilea. I probably have butchered that name, but Penthesilea, Artemisia. So if we go to a Theurgy, her gauge condition after the weakening enemies or inflicting an element, her will burns brighter. And then her characteristic element Surge greatly increases critical rate on foes with ailments with Mitsuru in battle. So any ailments basically charge. Her normal gauge condition, if you weaken an enemy, basically charges it as well. So Mitsuru is basically like a hybrid of a debuffer slash ailment person, but she also has access to very strong ice magic. Her Theurgies are Blizzard Edge and Blade of Execution. So you got two different ones, which is really good. So you've obviously got severe ice damage for one, ignoring resistances, and you've got Blade of Execution, massive almighty damage. More often than not, you will be using Blade of Execution, but you know, if a particular enemy, boss, or monad door, or whatever, is weak to ice, you probably use Blizzard Edge. But again, almighty damage is probably just the way to go. So if we just look at her persona stats, Artemisia, we've basically got the skills Diamond Dust, which is the pinnacle of the ice magic. So deals severe ice damage to one foe, medium chance of inflicting freeze. You got Marbuvidine, you got Eerie Sound, which is medium chance of distress. Concentrate, Marukunda, Ice Break, Ice Boost, and Ailment Boost. I think this is probably the best Mitsuru build as well. I don't think I would swap out anything really for anything pretty much. I think every other element is probably not very good. Eerie Sound's the best because it does distress on all foes, which I believe is a defense down inherently, you know, and then plus you got Ailment Boost, so you basically are going to land this on mobs more often than not. And as soon as that happens, you pretty much charge your Theurgy to max. So it's always good. And she's one of the only party members who actually has a pinnacle affinity skill in Diamond Dust. And it's really good. So definitely keep that. Concentrate, self-explanatory. You know, the mechanic basically is, you know, you Marukunda a boss, then you concentrate Diamond Dust, and then Marukunda if you need to, Icebreak if you need to as well. In case, you know, you can't get a boss's weakness, or if they're resistant to ice and you've got her in the party, she basically becomes useless. So Ice Break's obviously there for that reason. And then Ice Boost is pretty self-explanatory, and Ailment Boost. So next we'll be moving on to Aigis. Aigis, our favorite robot. She is a physical damage dealing machine. And I pretty much always have her in my party basically, but more on that later. So if we check out her synergies and whatnot, gauge condition after using physical skills, her drive to complete her mission intensifies. So basically you just go through and just use as much physical ability as you can. And her characteristic is Phys Amp, greatly strengthens physical skills. So that's why she's a physical damage dealing machine. She does run into the issue similar to Akihiko, where she has similar Theurgies, and one is just infinitely better than the other one, in my opinion. Orgy mode is good for mobs. Again, when you have more than one enemy, or actually probably more than 2 enemies, it deals heavy pierce damage to all foes. However, you can't control her after orgy mode, so she goes into a separate mode, and then you can't really control her, and then she basically breaks down after 3 turns, and then she goes on cooldown for 1 turn. So that's the caveat with orgy mode. However, when you do get her awakened persona, she does get access to maximum firepower, which deals severe pierce damage to 1 foe, and this is just much better to use. But again, mobs, probably single target. So we'll just go look at her persona and stats. So her awakened persona is Athena. Before that, it is Palladian. So we got Athena here. And yeah, as you can see, it's just basically full fizz. And she's a very good buffer as well, because she gets access to Matarukaja and Marakukaja. So we've got Myriad Arrows, Primal Force, Akasha Arts, Matarukaja, Marakukaja, Dekunda, Enduring Soul, Survive a Fatal Blow with HP fully recovered, which is super useful. And Insta Heal, which is also super useful. So you don't actually have to worry about Aigis getting hit by any ailments whatsoever. So yeah, basically, you can probably swap out a few of these. I like Dekunda just in case a boss casts any sort of debuff on us. It's a group lifting of that debuff, so you nullify the debuffs on yourself, which I think is just super useful in the late game, because a lot of the late game is all about buffing and debuffing, especially because a lot of bosses don't actually have any weaknesses, and they can go more than once a turn, so you definitely want this skill. Marakukaja and Matarukaja is pretty self-explanatory. Now, the only thing I would probably suggest, if you do want to go another build, is that you probably don't really need maybe Marakukaja, especially if you have a persona, or you have a bunch of personas that can do that job, or if you even have a persona that learns Auto Maraku. And you can probably swap this out for a healing skill. So she does get access to Daiharan, which I know a lot of people do actually put on. And also, if you're not too worried about the ailments sort of stuff, you can do Resist Fizz, which is her final skill that she learns. So she obviously reduces resists physical attack damage. But again, it really depends on your playstyle. If I have a healer in Yukari, then to be honest, I don't really need insta heal. I could just use Fizz. But it's also good to note that because she can buff, debuff, as well as just deal a shit ton of physical damage, it is good that she can just leave herself be. And you pretty much don't really need to worry too much because of Enduring Soul. So she, even if she dies, she'll just come back with full HP. So she's kind of just, it's like lack of a better term, she's kind of just a walking tank pretty much. And you can just let her be and let her do her thing, and not to worry about healing or nullifying any status elements on her. That's the way that I prefer to play Aigis. But if you want her in sort of like a hybrid role, then yeah, I'd probably recommend Fizz Amp, and then probably get rid of Marakukaja or something like that for Daiharan maybe. Okay, so we're going to move on to the odd one out. Not really, but the primary schooler in Ken. So Ken is the light-based damage dealer of the group. He also is very proficient in defensive magic. And to be perfectly honest, I think Ken is actually quite underrated. I think he's a very good party member in certain situations, especially for his utility. So if we look at his Theurgy is basically, once his SP is less than half, his competitiveness is incited. So as soon as you hit less than half SP, his Theurgy instantly maxes, or gets close to maxing, and it's pretty much just like nearly instant. His characteristic is Spirit Restore, so automatically recover 10 SP each turn in battle. So it kind of offsets it a little bit, but his spells do cost quite a lot of SP. So just be mindful of Ken's SP management. It can be a little bit difficult, but if you use him in the proper way, I think he's probably one of the strongest party members. So his 2 Theurgies are Divine Retribution, deals severe light damage, and Divine Intervention, which revives party, fully restores allies' HP, and will reflect 1 attack. So it's a group, basically it's a group salvation plus a Makarakan on top. So this is pretty much exactly the reason why I think Ken is quite underrated. This Theurgy is really, really good. So if you look at his persona, which is Kalanemi, and beforehand it is Nemesis, Justice Arcana. So this is Kalanemi here. So we have on him Zyodyne, Koga-on, Makoga-on, Heat Riser, Daikaja, Makarakan, Tetrakan, and Light Amp. Again, I think this is probably the best Ken build that you could probably get. You could argue you don't really need Zyodyne, you don't really need the dual affinities, and you would probably 9 times out of 10 be correct. I do like having Zyodyne in there because it means because a lot of the late game stuff, the light and dark resistance becomes quite apparent, especially with some of the final floor bosses, as well as some of the final bosses in the game. And having him just purely doing heat rises, Makarakans, Tetrakans, and all that sort of stuff doesn't really, you can't justify him being in your party if he can't actually deal any sort of damage. So that's why I really have Zyodyne in there. Kogan, Makoga, and Light Amp are pretty self-explanatory. He's the light-based damage dealer of the group. Heat Riser, self-explanatory. There's no better buffing skill than Heat Riser. Daikaja as well is really, really good. Especially because in the mid to late game, a lot of bosses do buff themselves and buff other people. Daikaja just gets rid of everything. It is such a good nullification ability. Makarakan, Tetrakan, so these are the very high SP cost skills, which works well with Ken, especially if this is personality, because you basically do want to use a lot of SP. And what you want to do with the utility is basically block attacks. So if you know a boss is particularly affinity is electric, and you've got Aigis in your party, you can Makarakan Aigis, it will reflect it back. Aigis basically gets a free turn, and the enemy won't get another free turn for hitting Aigis' weakness. Same with Tetrakan, you can definitely prevent bosses who use Revolution or Rebellion, or who get a lot of crits. Tetrakan is so good. And it's just really good to just bounce between Makarakan, Tetrakan, and basically putting a shield up and a barrier for your whole team, essentially, and which is why I think, again, Ken is a very good sort of party member to have, and a very good alternative as well. You can even, for example, if you're not too concerned about the Light Amp, you can get rid of Light Amp and have Meteorahan. So Ken can learn Meteorahan. It becomes basically I wouldn't say a better version of Yukari, definitely a weaker version of Yukari, but a more utility-based Yukari, essentially, with just these support skills. They're just really, really good. And yeah, Ken is just, I think, an underrated party member, and you should definitely consider using him and see how you go as well. I think it's pretty fun erecting all these barriers here on my whole team and reflecting magic and physical damage back at bosses. So there's not really anything else. You can probably swap out Zyodyne for maybe some Samarakan and Light Amp for maybe Meteorahan to get fully into the utility-based sort of stuff. But again, from my reasons outlined before, I think Zyodyne is just a good ability to have, and the light dealer damage of the group. If you pair it with Yukari, or even pair it yourself with Meteorahan and Marita Shower, he just becomes a utility tank pretty much, and then his Divine Retribution Theurgy just carries. Alrighty, finally we got everyone's favorite doggo, Koromaru, also my favorite party member of the entire game. So Koromaru is of the Strength Arcana, and his personality is, after exploiting an enemy's weakness, his will to fight grows. And then Auto Masakunda, which is so good, lowers accuracy evasion of all foes for 3 turns when the battle starts. Auto Masakunda, self-explanatory. It is so good, especially if you have him. It's an instant Masakunda, so you don't even have to worry about Masakundaing people, if that's a word. And then his personality works really, really well, especially because he's dual affinity. He's got fire and dark magic. So basically, as long as you hit a weakness, his Theurgy goes up. And his Theurgy is actually very useful as well, similar to Yukari. So basically, you have Hound of Hades, which is severe dark damage to one foe. And then you have next physical attack will deal double damage to enemies for all allies. Power Howling, which is basically a group charge. So if you combine Koromaru with Yukari, you've got a group charge and a group concentrate, and the Theurgies are both pretty exploitable in terms of how they actually get them, with Yukari obviously healing people, and then basically Koromaru just has to hit a couple of weaknesses. And then yeah, you can kind of see the synergies that play now. So Koromaru's persona is Cerberus. He doesn't actually get an awakening like everyone else, which is a bit of a shame. But his Cerberus is pretty good, and I'll show you why. So he's got Aegon, Maragidyne, Temper Slash, Debilitate, Masuga Kaja, Revolution, and Dark Amp. Now, this build it can be done in a lot of different ways. I do believe this build, I probably should have not kept Revolution because he does learn Fire Amp, and I probably should have put Fire Amp instead of Revolution. So I'll probably be going to the Blue V Club to rectify that. But pretend that Revolution's Fire Amp. Revolution is fine, like you can probably keep it in, but in the mid to late game, your crits are pretty much just going to come from yourself. So you'll be building personas that have innate crit, like my Siegfried, for example, which I will be doing a guide on, which is a crit machine. Every like second hit is guaranteed a crit pretty much. So you don't really need Revolution. And the downside to I guess not having Fire Amp is pretty much like your Miragi dying in the late game probably won't do that much damage. But yeah, again, there's not really much you can do, I believe, with Koromaru. I have seen some builds with Virus Breath to poison and just have some additional Almighty damage. But Virus Breath is a very costly SP skill, and Koromaru can run into some SP issues, especially with using Debilitate. Now, Debilitate is a really good ability. I don't think you swap this out at all. It decreases one foe's attack, defense, and accuracy all in one. So, especially with single target bosses, you don't even need to set up with any other teammates. You can just Debilitate it, and you know, basically they're gimped pretty much. Masuku Kaja is pretty self-explanatory as well. If you have in a party, Masuku Kaja is very useful because it increases the evasion rate of your party as well as the accuracy, and it's just an all-round good buffing skill. And yeah, like Virus Breath is quite costly, and with these skills especially, because Virus Breath is 25 SP, and when you're using all this sort of stuff as well, like you're going to run into SP issues, which is why I don't really recommend Virus Breath. And Temper Slash is just probably better, considering that with the crit abilities, as well as his as well as his group charge, even Koromaru can deal the physical damage, which synergizes with his Theurgy quite well. Plus you can get crits as well. So you basically essentially have 3 affinity-based, damage dealers, which is pretty good. So that's pretty much it for all the party members and what I think are the best skills. Now, you can go into the Blue V store and basically readjust your skills or relearn skills that you forgot for your party members. It does take up an evening time slot, so just be mindful of that, especially if you don't actually, you accidentally got rid of an ability. For example, like Koromaru, for example, I will get rid of Revolution for Fire Amp. You can do that at the Blue V Club. So yeah, don't worry too much about forgetting a skill that you probably should have or I've recommended. It really depends on what your playstyle is. So mine is basically, I'm just an all-rounder. I'll just be whatever utility. I always have Yukari in my party no matter what, because she's just such a good utility healer, and she basically can go get group concentrate Theurgies by healing people just all the time. And then I would usually have Aigis in my party and Koromaru. Koromaru is pretty much a staple for me just because I absolutely love the Doge. And then Aigis is just physical damage dealing machine. So, even if I need to use magic or I need to pick up some of the healing rolls, for example, then Aigis is there to back up with all the physical damage amp and everything that she gets. She does do a lot of damage, so that's something to keep in mind. Another party setup that I do recommend is just swapping out Koromaru for Mitsuru. Mitsuru just has a lot of magic dealing potential because she has her own concentrate as well. And then for group mobs, especially if you're farming stuff like gems and all that sort of stuff, it's really useful just to group confuse and then just crit, just crit them, and then just kill every single one of the enemies. Another party that I have been trying out recently is to actually have Yukari, Ken, and Junpei, which sounds really weird, especially because I do believe that Junpei, Akihiko, and Ken are probably some of the weaker members of the C's group. I'm sure someone in the comments probably disagrees. However, I do believe Junpei actually does have a lot of potential, especially if you pair him with a lot of crit based accessories, because his ability to crit and just basically do a shit ton of damage is quite high, especially because his persona in Trismegistus has a really high strength stat. It's 77. Like, that is super high, and he's only level 77, right? So the amount of physical damage potential that he has is super good. Plus he has all 3 physical damage affinities, and he has high counter. So I consider Junpei to be pretty decent, and then obviously Ken just for the utility. So you can basically just shore up Junpei's weaknesses, so then he can hopefully build up the Theurgy gauge and just go all out on one of his Theurgies. And then obviously Ken with just the amount of stuff that you know, he provides. Basically, you can pretty much slot Ken into any sort of party, really. You can even have like you know, Yukari, Ken, Koromaru, for example. You can even have Koromaru, Ken, and then maybe get rid of Yukari. You pick up the healing duties and have Junpei. Yeah, there's actually quite a lot of parties that you can consider. And the main thing that I go about to make sure that you have a good party is that every single turn, can you do something? And basically, I mean, is sometimes I'm sure people have gone into Tartarus or gone into a boss fight and go, shit, this party member can't actually do anything. Like I can't do damage, I can't, you know, heal, I can't do utility, so I have to guard, or I have to use items, or for example. That's when you know your party is not too good. Now again, you can probably counteract that by having a good persona stock for yourself when you fuse. But in general, your party should just be purely, can everyone do something on a turn? And if the answer is no, then that party setup is probably not right. You probably need to swap out someone just to double check and make sure that, you know, everyone can do something on the turn, everyone's turn is meaningful, and you'll get through the game just a lot quicker and a lot simpler, I guess. So yeah, that's pretty much it from my my perspective and my guide on the best party member skills. This is just a guide only, so take it, you know, however you want. Obviously, there are a few ideas that I floated around about some skills and whatnot that you could possibly have. But I do believe that everyone in this game is quite useful. Akihiko is probably the one that I wouldn't highly recommend using. But everyone else is quite useful. And yeah, it's just very fun to just experiment with teams. Like I experiment all the time, like especially with SP management. If Koromaru runs out of SP, I just swapped straight to Mitsuru. Like that's just the way you do it, and it's the way that you should be doing it, especially when you have so much potential with everyone basically. And you can always pick up the slack with your own personas as well. So thanks for watching the guide on the best party members and the best party member skills to have. Definitely leave a comment down below about what you think and about what your party member setups are. I would love to see other people's builds and what other people do. Definitely get some ideas for New Game Plus for sure. So if you did enjoy the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It definitely helps out the channel a lot and it's greatly appreciated. And thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.